Hey, everybody. Peace, happy family. Okay, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everyone is safe and their spirit is in a good place. So tonight we have a very special guest. Is a happy cast member. But before I get to him, just a little bit of a couple announcements. So if you guys don't know, the Happy Film tickets are for sale. Finally, yes, we have a premiere on July 18th at 7 p.m. and that's a Saturday, and that's Eastern Standard Time. So I need for everybody to do two things for me, okay? One, actually, I need you to do three things. First thing I need for you to do is to go to hapifilm.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Now, let me tell you about this newsletter. We put it out every month, and we have a 13-year-old that actually writes the health article every month, and he's really dope. So you gotta check it out. If you don't check it out for any other reason, you gotta check out this young brother. He's out of Georgia. We also put some financial 101 stuff in there. We talk about economic innovators, and we always do a HAPI update. So that's the first thing I want you to do. Now, the second thing is I want you to go back to hapifilm.com, but you're already there, and purchase your ticket. This is so important for us, okay? These are all stars up in this film. We have everybody. We have the brightest minds, the brightest scholars, politicians, historians. We got everybody up in here, including this guest that we have coming on. We have people like Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Julianne Melvo, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Patricia Newton, Boyce Watkins, Dr. Solange Ashby. We have everybody. Asar Imhotep. So Jabari Ozace. So I'm telling you, you've got to get your ticket. And the third thing I want you guys to do is that once you get your ticket, grab your family members and sit down and watch this film as a family. It's a lot of information that we all need to be okay and to make these next months and next years powerful ones. And so grab your families and sit down and watch HAPI. All right, so this is very exciting. I know every time I come on here, I'm always excited, but I'm really excited today. And before I introduce this person, let me just tell you a little story. So when I first started working on HAPI, at this point, most of the interviews, actually all of them were completed except for maybe one or two. And so the only thing that connected me to the people that's in this film is looking at them on this film. And we had this person narrating quite a bit of the film. And so the first thing I noticed was his voice. I was like, oh my God, who has this voice like this? Just such a commanding voice. And so then I started to see what this person was talking about. And he just breaks it down, the consummate teacher. So I had the opportunity to go visit him at his house. And, as I walked in, I was like, oh, he's everything that I thought he would be. And as we sat down, we started talking, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, wait, I have to introduce you to someone. And I was like, wow, there's some more people up in here. I was like, okay, hey, we're good. So he takes me to another room where he had this beautiful mantle that had all of his ancestors on there. And up until this point, I had never really knew what an altar was. I knew that, in my mind, I thought it was like something scary. Like I just didn't know. It was just ignorance. And he took the time to introduce me. He took the time to tell me a little bit about them. And he also he gave me the information in terms of he told me like what was on the altar, why you need it, just things like that. And so at that point, he planted a seed. I didn't know. It's not like I left the next day and it's like, let me build an altar. But what he planted in me grew over, it sparked my ability to start looking at all different things. And so a couple months later, I finally made my own altar. And now I might be altar bougie because when I talk to people and they're telling me about stuff, I'm like, oh, you need to get your altar. You don't got your altar together. So I really want to thank this man, because if it was not for him, I wouldn't have even thought that it was possible to even think of. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Professor James Small. Yay! I need to get some like applause or something. King Simon has applause on his show. I need to get something over here. How you doing, Professor Small?
I'm doing fine, Sister Felicia. I'm doing very well. And it's good to see you again. And it's
Yes.
good to be talking about HAPI, which is about to explode onto the world scene.
Yes. Yes.
And
So as you know, if people don't know by now, but Professor James Small is actually in HAPI, and he was one of the reasons why the director Taki Grant actually decided to do the film. Him and Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Mfudishi. So this is really an honor to be sitting here with you tonight.
well, it's my honor.
Huh?
You guys have produced the most extraordinary document. This is the most beautiful film I've ever seen done on Kemet. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've seen everything, right? This piece, this is going to be the standard for how you talk about Kemet, how you talk about
Yes.
Africa.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, you have an extensive biography. You've done everything. Um, but I wanted to kind of jump in and start talking about some of the things that you actually talk about in the film. Um, and before we get to that, because there's some things you talk about, like you talk about ecology and you explain those things. But before we even get to ecology, can you just tell me what is the divine? Like, what is divinity? Like through African eyes.
Well, most African languages that I've studied, their word for what we call God
Mm-hmm.
or the divine is the totality of everything. Sometimes they say the totality of creation, but in every people, person, place, or thing, God, the word for God, is either the prefix or the suffix. So that means in everything an African deal with, the divine is in it. And it's also in everything in nature and everything in the cosmology. So it's the totality of everything. And we are part of that totality. You know, we're like a miniature universe, you know. And so everything that's contained in the universe, including all of its possibilities, is also contained in us. So when we talk about the divine, before you go seeking it in a church or a mosque or a temple or a shrine, first seek it in the most immediate shrine, which is your own body and your own mind.
Mm.
Once you learn to center and find the divine in you, you'll recognize it in anything else.
So, okay, that sounds like a lot. I mean, it sounds very. I mean, like it sounds kind of hard. Just I'm just going to put it out there. I guess, like, how do you find the divine in you? Do you need like someone to help you, or is there? I mean, like, just how do you do that?
Well, the first thing is a word that we don't use a lot. It is obedience.
Mm.
Obedience to the teachings of your ancestors. Obedience to the teachings of your parents. Obedience to the teachings of your most ancient civilization, which means you've got to know your own history. You must know the history of the African American people. You must know the history of the African Caribbean people, the African South American people, the African American people. That history is the experiences of your ancestry, the good and the bad. And once you learn your history, you can begin to explore your own personal genealogy. Somebody said, well, my father drank, but he didn't tell you to drink, you know. He was always telling you the most important opposite, how not to do that. So the question even that we find in ancient Kemetic literature, and we saw was taken into Hebrew and Christian and Muslim literature, honor thy mother and thy father.
Mm.
So if you don't respect ancestors and the experiences they've had, which we call history, and study those experiences so you can learn from their mistakes and their victories, you'll have a difficult time constructing the divine in you. Every human being, everything that exists is an expression of an aspect of the total divinity, which is the totality of everything. That's what the white man is trying to call the theory of one. He's trying to find God mathematically. So he calls it the theory of one. But he's not been able to get there. He can't prove it because you can't prove it. You have to be it. See?
Yeah.
And so that's why I like the term by Sister Zora Neale Hurston. She said to go there, I mean, to be there, to be it, to be there, you've got to go there. And to go there, you got to know there. So you can't be there unless you go there, but you can't go there unless you know there. So we're right back to studying the experiences of the ancestors, which we call our history. Your history is your ancestors instructing and informing you of how to build your now. And when you think of it, everything is one. Without yesterday, you know nothing. You can't speak. You don't even know what vision is. All the knowledge you have that you're using in today's world, in the present, comes from yesterday. And the minute you've formulated something in the present, to become your future, you're designing in the presence, and everything you make in the presence of the thing you perceive as future. But as soon as you design them, they become the past again, to teach the next generation how to live in the presence by aspiring for the future. But it's all the same thing. It's all one. Muslims even have a prayer. It's called Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, wa lam yulad, wa lam yulid, wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. It says, know that Allah is one, He begets and knows He begotten. And it's a beautiful Muslim prayer. But if you go back to Kemet and study the prayer of Akhenaten, he has the same prayer. O soul God, you who was given birth to by none and has given birth to none, it is you alone, and I, Akhenaten, am your servant. So that concept of the oneness of God goes back to the very beginning of our understanding. And when we study our history, like the pyramid texts and the book of the coming forth by day, it will tell you very plainly that when the cosmos and the nature, when the universe manifests as a human, it was a black woman. They call it the primordial woman, the primordial water, or the black waters of Nun. All right. And because only this feminine phenomena could then give birth to everything else. So studying history, so you can be informed by your ancestry, and then studying you. Because when your mom and dad gave birth to you, they gave birth to themselves. They had nothing else to give birth to. So you didn't drop out of the sky or brought in by a stork or nothing. When they gave birth to you, when that sperm and that egg met and decided to unite, that was your mother and daddy uniting as you. And as they were uniting as you, you were also the unity that was them. And when they gave birth to you, they gave birth to the only thing they could give birth to is themselves. Now, if you take that concept backwards, you end up with the divine itself being the father, mother of all of us and our primary ancestry. So we are an extension of the divine having a human experience called us. That's right up out of Kemet 101.
Wow. I don't think I can get that from church. I mean, I don't know. That's
They
wow.
won't teach it like that in church. I'm sorry.
No. No. And so one thing you said, you said that once you can recognize the divine in yourself, then it makes it easier for you to recognize the divine in others.
Right. You then know what you're seeing. Right now, we see attraction, we see attachment, we see charisma, we see, the makeup, brothers with their hair either braided right or brother with the hair locked right or cut bald like mine, and they got on the right clothes with the ankh on it, and this aesthetic presentation, which is almost always never the real deal. It is a presentation. And that's why they call it makeup. You make yourself up and present this false self in order to attract another self. But that should not be the thing that brings you together. Once the aesthetic attraction is presented, you should look for the essence behind the aesthetic attraction. That essence is the divine in that person. And since you know what the divine feels like, looks like, sound like in yourself, it looks exactly the same in them if it's alive and well. And if it's not there, you'll know it.
So what's the purpose of people coming together, like African people come together? Like what's the purpose?
To constantly recreate yourself and perfect divinity itself. Remember, you're a part of divinity. Divinity is constantly perfecting itself. You're one of those tools in that process of perfection.
So when you get together with someone, it seems like you may need some help. Like how do you make that work?
That's where culture comes in. Culture, the word itself means to cultivate. What is it that you're cultivating? You're cultivating the best of your past. You can't take everything forward. Some of it didn't work well. Some of it won't work well now. But you cultivate the best of the values, the best of the interests, the best of the principles, the best of the ethics, and the best of the moral. And you design that as the socialization process that teaches you how to be a human being. I think that's simple and clear, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I love the way you break down stuff. You break down everything down to where I can understand. So I love that. And I'm sure everybody else does that. Watch, because I've been watching a lot of videos of you, and all your videos, you've had the same tone in terms of just the same way you lay it down. You've been laying it down like that for years. So I appreciate that. So, okay, so
the key thing is, if you're teaching, you must make sure that people have the ability to learn what you're teaching. Otherwise, you can be admirable and be adored, and the people walk away without anything they can use in their own transformation, because this is about transformation at the end of the day. Every day we should be transforming. Every day should be about transformation. And all of our spiritual traditions, they talk about having knowledge, having understanding, and having wisdom. Well, wisdom is the appropriate application of the knowledge which you've gained an understanding of. Yeah. And the knowledge's purpose should be to take you to a process of awareness for the need for change, and then a process of change, and then a process of transformation as a result of change.
You have to be brave. It seems like you have to be brave to go through that. Like it's not for the weak at heart.
Well, when you look around and see the traumas and scars and bruises and bumps on everybody else, it's much less courageous to do what I just said than to go through all of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it comes down to that word we use, truth. Accept the truth that you see. Accept the truth that you experience. Don't try to turn it into something it's not. It is what it is.
Yeah, I like that. It is what it is. That's you know what, I've been saying that a lot. I'm like, this is what it is. So you bring up culture, and this is actually one of the things that you talk about in HAPI, which is a film that we're showing July 18th at 7 p.m. Online. Make sure you guys get your tickets. But can you talk about culture in regards to economics and politics?
Right. Well, let's start with economics first, because the film is all about economics, but how economics is tied into everything else that we do. So economics is what you do with the wealth in your environment and your ecology. So if we were in Ghana, for instance, the primary economic instrument would be gold, diamond, cocoa, manganese, bauxite, right? So we would extract it from the earth and sell it in the world's marketplace for something in return to build our communities, our hospitals, our schools, our roads, etc. And so if we were in ancient Kemet, HAPI, the river, HAPI, which is what we call the Nile. The enemy calls it the Nile. We call it HAPI. HAPI would bring all of the silt and black mud from Congo, from Uganda, from Ethiopia, from Kenya, Tanzania, all of that black silt, which is rotted plants and other kinds of organisms that have decayed, and bring it down her banks, down the Nile, and deposit it on the banks of the desert we call Kemet. And in that deposit, we were able to plant so we can create linen, wheat, barley, all sorts of vegetable, papyrus, lotus, and other flower and plants. We were able to grow a certain kind of vegetables to feed cattle, and now we can raise cattle, and we had meat to exchange. Now we can catch the fish, which is in that river, and market the fish to those populations that didn't have protein in their ecology in exchange for the things we want. With Lebanon, we want cedar to build our temples. So we would trade the protein products, the fish and the meat and the vegetables, things they couldn't grow there, you know. So HAPI created an ecology that allowed us to extract from it riches that we can turn into wealth to build our community when we exchange on the world marketplace. And that goes true for Detroit, New York, Chicago, LA. Where is the HAPI River in Chicago? Where is the HAPI River in Detroit, right? And so the HAPI River is the resources. What is the resources in urban America? The first resource is real estate ownership. The second resource is retail ownership. The third is wholesale ownership. The fourth is tax revenue that you pay into your government structure that comes back as earmarked money to be used for schools, for police, for sanitation, for highway maintenance, etc., for electricity. And so how do you then get that wealth? First, you have to understand it's there. You can't live in a place and say, I have a community, and you don't own any real estate, and you don't own the retail businesses, and you don't own the hotel business. First of all, that's not a community. That's a definition of a neighborhood. A neighborhood is a geographical location where people who speak generally the same language, practice generally the same religion and culture, lived in the same geographical space, but they don't own anything. But that's a neighborhood. Now, a community is all of that, plus you own the real retail, wholesale, the real estate that's there. When you own those three things, you then are able to control the politics. See, the politics is what you create to manage your economics.
Okay.
Determine who goes to office, because you have the money now to finance them. You have the monies to promote them so that the people you want go there, and that's somebody that somebody else finances and promotes that won't serve you because you were not the one that put them there. And the reason that you want them into politics so they can make the laws and the rules and the regulations to govern how your economics behave so that everyone in the society can get some reward from it. Culture, which is the most important of the three, and the three must be married. Economic, politics, and culture must be married to one another. So we call economics the woman, and politics and culture the man. And that makes her polyandry because she's got two husbands. But the second husband, the role of culture, that's your educational system. Culture informs you of your purpose, It allows you to develop your self-worth, your self-value, and your self-esteem around understanding identity and lineage. Again, we go back to knowing history and knowing ancestry and being informed by your history and your ancestry. And so culture is your education system. You know, in ancient Kemet, we say they got all these great temples. Those were not temples. Those were places of learning. They were what we would call the first universities on that grand level in the world. But the culture itself is the university. Understand? The culture teaches you the ethic and the moral governance through principles and concepts and ideas that will inform how you form the character that behaves in the polity in order to manage the economy.
So if you don't have a good, like if you don't have culture, then your wealth is.
If you don't have culture, you'll be like the African American, the $1 trillion man and woman that's not in control of anything in their lives.
Oh.
Because we don't have a culture to govern our behavior on how we should manage and organize that $1 trillion. Dr. Claude Anderson said we need to learn how to aggregate that money so it don't just turn over in our hands one time and go to an enemy. You know? So we spend $1 trillion a year and we walk around complaining. The people who are 50 million strong, spending $1 trillion a year should be at zero unemployment if they control the real estate, the retail, and the wholesale institutions where they live.
Okay, so how do we get our culture? What do we need to do in order to
everything you do? Dr. Ben said you have to deify your culture. And what he meant by that is that you have to let your culture be the expression of your understanding of your divinity. So let's start. Culture is everything a people do. How you dress, where you got the cloth to make the dress, what designs you have on the dress, what's the message, what does it reflect, how the dress fits you, what does it reflect, what's the message it sends. That's a part of culture. Your food. If you come out of a history that talks about the divine living within, then it behooves you to keep the temple that the divine lives in healthy and strong. So what kind of food, what kind of cuisine, what kind of diet that the community has adopted to keep them at optimal health, right? So that becomes your culture, you understand? And so, somebody said to cultivate your nature, absolutely. You know, there's silos, congas. We have to understand that culture isn't dance and music and dress and drama. Those are tools of culture. What those instruments do is to purvey the ideas and the principles to the people so that they can practice them. But your culture is everything. It is your notion of science. It's your notion of God. It is the way you dress. It's your sense of beauty. It's your sense of appropriate aesthetics. It's the diet that you eat. It is how you rear your children. It is what determines your concept of love, what determines why you have to defend yourself and what you have to defend yourself against. All of these things and more makes up your culture. So we put the culture in packages to teach it. Dancing is one way to teach it. Drama is another way to teach it. Music is another way to teach it. Oral griots is another way to teach it. The clothing we wear should teach. Like I have an ankh on the front of my shirt, which means life. Generally, on the back, I have the Jinyami from Ghana, which means not but God exists. And so when I walk, I'm teaching a lesson to those who know. I'm saying I'm walking in life because the divine is behind me. You know?
I like that.
When you see the symbols, you go like, okay, I got that. And I don't have to do a whole dissertation. Just those symbols, because you know what the symbols are. It then gives you a lesson, you know. And so culture, I think it was Sister Marimba Ani who said, culture protects the people from genocide. And the reason we're suffering genocide is we don't have our culture intact.
Yeah, so it seems like there's pockets of people who maybe have traditions and things that they do, but how do
Don't,
how do we work, globally to do that?
well, okay, because that's where history comes in. It is the ancestors that instructs us globally. So that you don't just do a little thing over here and somebody else doing a thing over there and somebody else doing a thing over there and none of it is connected. If we're listening to the same ancestry, then we
Mm,
will be informed and instructed of the same rules, regulation, and governance that we must practice in order to produce what we produce. We're in a world where the concept of family is in question. But our ancestors told us what the concept of family was for them in order for them to build the extraordinary civilizations that they built. And the concept of family was a male, female, child. Okay?
mm,
That male and female came together and recreated themselves.
mm.
See, Haru isn't some special little brother who's the hero and the warrior. Haru is the next level towards eternity of his mama and his daddy. He is them going forward. So he's coming forward not only as them, but now he's in having an experience that will expand himself and make an even greater them. But without that mother and father, the ancestors, Haru doesn't exist. Without Haru, mom and daddy dies and stop existing. And so the family is the foundation of African civilization. You know?
All right. So we got to work on our families. I mean, that's like the first step. Yeah.
That's the absolute first step. But the first step is learning history and culture of our ancestors so we know what to work on our families with.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of work needs to be done? What's our notion of forgiveness? What is our notion of reciprocity? When someone has done something wrong in a certain category, what is it that the community requires of them in terms of reciprocity for that to be made right in order for him to then be a part of the community again? There's a book written by Jomo Kenyatta. It's called Facing Mankinya. Jomo Kenyatta was the head of the Mau Mau, one of the main leaders, along with Didan Kamanti of the Mau Maus in Kenya in the 40s and 50s, fighting against British colonialism and genocide. And in the book Facing Mankinya, he's talking about age grouping, like children, everybody who was 1 year old that year remained together in partnership in a sisterhood, brotherhood for the rest of their lives. When that group of children got to be 13, they started going through a certain rites of passage process to teach them how to take on the responsibilities of adults in that community by learning the culture, meaning the principles and the rules that govern the behavior, that form the character, that build the society that they lived in. One of the things they had for teenagers, and we all are old enough to know, you get the urge for sex very young, usually happen around between 10 and 12, or between, especially between 12 and 16, and we hop the truck, males and females. They understand that that's a normal reaction in the human animal. So they had this special house that the teenagers would go into and have simulated sex, right? But one of the things couldn't happen. You could not touch any of the sacred space on the woman. You can pet what we call pet each other in the society, lay on each other. And they even talked about how they tied the cloth between the sisters' legs and so forth so the brothers couldn't get access. Any brother that violated that got kicked out of the age group. What that meant, you in no man's land. You had no friends. You had no fraternity or sorority to be a part of. You were by yourself, and everybody in the community would scorn you. You understand? You couldn't be, if you were 13 and you did that, and you got kicked out of that grouping in the village, you couldn't go to the grouping who was 12 or 14 or 15. You were in no man's land. by yourself, not a part of the community, not a part of the civilization. Who wants to be there? You understand? That may seem like a little thing. In other cultures, like if we looked at the Yoruba, when girls got to be, and in almost all African cultures, a certain age, and boys got to be a certain age, they were taken into the forest, but not just to run around in the bush. They were being trained on how to be and how to behave as responsible adults. So that when they came back to the village after a year or two, we have the Poro Society, the other societies in Liberia and Sierra Leone, where this goes on right now to this day. When you came back to the community, you were prepared to be a mother and a father and a responsible element in the community, knowing the fundamental of the ethical and moral foundations that undergirded that community and what you were responsible for.
Wow.
So culture is the biggest of all the three.
Yeah.
Because it's the sacred governance. And what the African was trying to do with culture is to imitate what they perceived through their studies as the behavior of the divine.
Wow. So in terms of like when you're looking at this like triangle of connection between economics, politics, and culture, why is something like HAPI important for us to look at? Like in terms of like the movie, when you're looking at that triangle.
Because what HAPI gives us, and this concept, I learned to put it together from my teacher. One of my teachers, Professor Leonard Jeffries.
Yes,
he was the first one that introduced me to looking at it in that way.
Systems analysis.
What HAPI would help us with is to look at the now. The Nile Valley happened, that civilization happened thousands of years ago in the Nile Valley. Then we were defeated by enemies from the north and driven out of our sacred valley, most of us. And we had to leave so much behind. But we took the fundamental principles of the Nile Valley and all of the other earlier civilizations that created the Nile Valley, and we took it all over Africa. And we created new civilizations wherever we went, based on those same fundamental principles. So what HAPI will go to teach us is what those principles are when we look at them today, and how do we pull them into the structure we use to organize our families and our communities today. How do we take the riches we're making and the job we have at the federal government, and we have all these municipal jobs, and we have construction jobs, and we have small businesses, and how do we take all that riches and turn it into wealth that the community can all profit from? Meaning, how do we organize our own banks? How do we organize our credit unions? Okay. How do we organize our investment streams and investment threads? How do we organize and finance construction companies? How do we train our young men? Because right now, young men particularly is coming out of high school, barely read or write or do any math. So they can't go to college, many of them. So how do we teach them to be carpenters? Every home needs a carpenter to build it and to maintain it. How do we teach them to be a plumber? Every home needs a plumber to build it and to maintain it. How do we teach them to be electricians? Every home needs an electrician to help build it and to maintain it, and on and on. And then there's the higher technical skills that we all know you don't have to go to college to get. People talk about Silicon Valley. The people that are doing most of the things in Silicon Valley that's changing the world don't have any college degrees. And most of the millionaires and billionaires that rule the world, they don't have any either. And if they got it, it was given to them because of their family name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we do need to go to institutions of training like university and college, but we need to go there to get skilled and to get tools to come back and build the happy community that we live in. Not get a degree, then pack your bags and move into the European communities because you got a job on Wall Street. No, we need to go to Wall Street, learn the tricks of the trade, and bring it back to 125th Street or Bed-Stuy or Brownsville. And what HAPI shows us is that we can do that.
Yeah.
Because we'll be in control if we use our capital well of land, labor, and resources. And you can get control of land, labor, and resources where you live when you start taking control of real estate, retail, and wholesale. And that allows you to build a politics so you can take control of the school system so that you can decide and determine the types of minds and profiles of minds that come through that system back into your community. That power also gives you the power to elect your city council person, to elect your mayor, to elect your school board people, to elect your community board people, so you can determine who police your community and what the nature of that policing is. But if you don't have that power, then somebody will select your policeman as they're doing now and determine what policing is. And then you have to constantly go in the streets when genocide is committed against you just to shake the system. Take control of the system where you live.
Yeah.
Learn to study the election laws where you live. Learn how to put someone on the ballot. Learn how to get petitions and learn how to take your comrade. If we don't want that brother over there who's been messing up or that sister who's been messing up, let's take one of us then. Let's learn how the thing works. We can't continue to live in a society complaining about the society and don't know how it works. If we're going to use it for our benefit, we've got to know how it works. And at the foundation of that working is your control of the riches in your environment so that you can turn those riches into your wealth.
So you talked about this before, the ecology. And can you just kind of just give a definition, even though you've talked about the ecology, but just for those who might have missed it?
Well, you know, ecology is the environment you live in. That's where the word economics come from, eco, from ecology. It is the wealth in that ecology. It's the wealth where you live, that you mine, that you harvest to create the economics, you know. So like I said, in the Nile Valley, the ecology was the river and the farms and the cattle and the wheat and the barley. But in Harlem, we don't have that. So what is our happy river in Harlem? So our happy river in Harlem is I control the real estate. I control the retail. I control the wholesale. Then I can control and influence the schools. I can determine the quality of learning that comes out of those schools to come back in the community to grow it even better. You know, I can control the police behavior in my community. So I'm gonna make a rule: if you're gonna police my community, you got to live in my community, and the people got to know you, and you got to know them. And there ain't gonna be too many people practicing brutality if everybody know where they live.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. That's why they don't live in the community. You see, so but that's your ecology. Your community is your ecology. The things in your community, the needs in your community. Who's going to run the herbal store? Who's going to run the green market? Who's going to run, even if somebody wants to eat meat, okay, who's going to make sure that we have meat that is healthy and not full of poison, but that you can get protein from? If you're going to run the fish market, is it going to be toxic fish, or are we going to find ways to get fresh, healthy protein-bearing fish, and so forth? Who's going to run the food market to hook up with the Black farmers down in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, bring that produce by trucks? Who's going to drive the trucks to bring the produce up to New York? All of this is your ecology, because it's out of that ecology comes your economics.
I just one thing I just want to let everybody know: the fireworks. I'm in Harlem, and fireworks have been going on for a month. And so if you hear that in the background, I keep trying to mute it so you don't. It sounds, like
it's going up here in New Rochelle also.
It's like I don't know where they came from.
You live in New Rochelle. Is any Black folks up there? One of the oldest Black community in New York. Black folks have been in New Rochelle since the 1700s. Earlier than that, really since the 1500s. But they've been here in large numbers since the 1700s. And I live in one of the oldest Black communities up here. I mean, right down the street is Malcolm X Boulevard, and a couple blocks over is Martin Luther King Boulevard. They all, we live here. But because other people claim it, we have allowed our presence to be marginalized. Like, who thinks of Mount Vernon as a black town? But it's a 75% black town. It should be the Mecca in New York. Yonkers is one of the largest black community in Westchester County. Even though we're not the majority of Yonkers, in Westchester, we're the largest black population in Yonkers. But we don't have our culture, our politics, and our economics in our control. So we don't know what our power is in Yonkers or in New Rochelle or in Mount Vernon.
This seems like a fight that everybody can get. There's a job for everybody in this.
Absolutely.
Because one person can't, maybe really change all three of those. But, if I do one thing well.
Community, it takes the village.
Yeah, take the village. Have you personally lived in that type of environment where you had the politics, the economics, and the culture, all together?
Probably when I was very young. A lot of people don't know the South very well. Now, I come from South Carolina, a place called Georgetown. And mostly rural. Georgetown was the city, and we made up about 20% of the city, sometimes more. But in the rural area, we were more than 50%. And in the rural area, we had all of those villages we built during slavery and after slavery, like Plantersville, Frasersville, Parkersville, Simmonsville. These were all little 100% black towns, along Highway 17 near the Atlantic Ocean. And I didn't know there was a really white world. I never had a white teacher until I went to college, okay? Wow. So everybody that taught me loved me.
Oh.
Matter of fact, my elementary school teacher just turned 99. We talk every month.
Wow.
Hey, we had a one-room classroom. You had the first grade in one row, second grade in one row, third grade in one row, fourth grade in one. And that one lady taught all of us every day. But what made her teaching work is the love, because we were people. Most of us were farmers or fishers, and then there was a big international paper plant down there. Many people work at that paper plant. But we came back to our homes and our land that we own and still own. Simmonsville is still there. Marysville and Simmonsville is all my family. They're just my family. The street around Marysville is called Smalls Loop. But people don't know we exist. But it's not just true for Georgetown. We like that all over the South. There are black towns all over the South. But they lack this formula. And the reason, the tyranny that we had to live through, the terrorism that we've had to live through for the last 300 plus years, and the miseducation and the denial of access to our own education and history has put us in a place Dr. Nobles called a shattered consciousness and a broken black identity. And Dr. Nobles is one of the brothers that's in HAPI.
Yes.
And so to fix that shattered consciousness and that broken black identity, we have to start with teaching our history to our children in our homes. While we fight to get it in the schools, don't wait to teach it in the homes, teach it in the church, teach it in the mosque, teach it in the daycare centers. If we can, remember that song, Young, Gifted, and Black?
Yeah.
Listen to the lyrics of that song. I think George Benson, right? That was George. And he was trying to tell us then to give people a sense of pride. They have to know who they are.
Yeah.
And so history, Dr. Noble said, will erase the European mystery. Right now, we're fogged into the European mystery of what life is all about. So when we get out of school, and many of us go to college, let me not take it, all of us are not on the negative end of that scale. Many of us go to college and we get degrees and we get skilled and we get tools and we're the best. We built this country and we still run this country. But we're running it as a part of white American institutions national dominance. We're not bringing those skills and those training to build the Black community in the way the Chinese use it to build the Chinatowns and the China community, or the Koreans build the Korean communities, or the East Indian build the East Indian communities, or the Arab build the Arab communities. We're trying to be a part of everything and everybody else's thing, and we haven't established our thing.
Yeah.
And so we become sacrificed for all of the willing or unwilling parasites of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a saprophyte is an organism that is preyed upon because it's weak by a parasite, which is an organism that is stronger and preys upon the weaker.
Mm. But you know, like this, the way you're breaking it down, if we can just get a connection to our divinity, like through our history, like that right there just makes you feel, just hearing you say that, you know, that
value,
divinity
that you have self-worth. You know, you have self-value, and that's how you do self-esteem. But once you get the level of self-esteem, that is the bonding with others who have self-worth and self-value. Yeah. The Yoruba had a word for it. You know, today we think of the Yoruba as some people in Nigeria, but during the genocide of the transatlantic slave trade, there was no nation called Nigeria. So Yorubas were spread all over West Africa. But when they saw each other on the slave ship, from the birth scarification to let people know what family they belonged to, they recognized one another, and they had a word to acknowledge that, to say, you belong to me and I belong to you. And that word is Lukumi. Today they call their religious traditions in Cuba Lukumi. But that word comes from saying, you belong to me and I belong to you. We need to practice and understand Lukumi. We need to know that you belong to me, Felicia, and I belong to you. Yeah. And that goes from the cradle to the grave. History gives you that bonding, because history informs and instructs you in the experiences of your ancestors, good and bad, in the fight to survive, in the victories they won, and the aspirations they had. And their culture, which is the rules and regulations that govern the building of their characters, that built the society they want their children to live in, will then become our behavior. Yeah. And you know, one last, I know I'm already cutting you off.
That's okay.
The reason for all of what I've said, the primary motivation is to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for yourself and your family. Let's do that again. See, we leave that out. Yes, but why you go to college? I want to be a doctor. Why you want to be a doctor? Because I want to help people. You're lying. You go to college to be a doctor because you're going to make some money to buy food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your family. Yeah. Later, okay? So what is the primary motivation for human activity? And that is to stay alive. And to do that, you must provide food, clothing, shelter, safety for yourself and your family. So all the other things I said we need to do, the purpose we need to do them is to be able to provide the food, clothing, shelter, and safety.
Yeah. So one of the things you said, you belong to me and I belong to you. And I was just thinking, I was like, if that's how I believe and that's what I say and that just is everything to me, then I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to kill you.
I'm not going to you hurt yourself.
Yes.
The reason we're able to kill each other in the streets the way we're doing and shoot in a crowd and hit a child and all of these things that we're doing, because we hate ourselves. We live in a culture that has taught us to hate ourselves, to hate everything we are. Even a lot of the gender playing that we're seeing now, where our brothers and sisters may not necessarily be gay, but they join that community because to stand up as a Black man in America is rough. Let me stand up in another kind of way that I don't have to fight that bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that white community will accept me.
Yeah.
We think.
I was about to say,
that ain't what's really happening, because our gay brothers and sisters is dealing. That's why they say Black gay lives matter too, because somebody had shown them that Black gay lives don't matter to them. And I'll leave that subject alone. But the point I'm trying to make is that a people in every generation must carry on intergenerational transmission of the body of wisdom of their ancestors to the future children to be born. And that's what our jobs are. To do that, we must be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for ourselves and our family. To do that, we must be organized in communities and neighborhoods. To do that, we must control the economic, politics, and culture where we live. To do that, we must be in ownership of the real estate and in control of the retail and the wholesale where we live. The labor is there. That's us.
To even get to that point,
HAPI tries to lead us to that. Why we need to open Black banks. Why we need to support the Black banks that already exist. Why we need to learn how to open credit unions where we don't have Black banks. Why we need to take that money and collectively and communally and cooperatively, as our tradition teaches us, and invest it together to buy that abandoned building that has been sitting there for 6 years, that we walk by spending $1 trillion, and then some other ethnic group come and buy it and we scream gentrification. Well, the building was sitting there. You spent $1 trillion. You could have aggregated that money and bought that building.
Yeah.
And created an income for the janitor, for the painter, for the carpenter, for the maintenance man, for the person who work in the rental office, etc. But we didn't do that because we didn't know what the responsibility of a group of people who have an identity is to one another. And so we do come back to the question of identity all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when you're like talking about this, I'm thinking about just like the making of HAPI. It was like we were living HAPI in the cooperative piece of just putting this together. Like, how did you how did you feel like when Taki asked you to be in it, or like just how like what was your words of wisdom, or did you give any, or like how did that go down?
No, Taki is a son. You know, he's, to me and Dr. Jeffries, he's a son, he's a nephew. Nobody else can call me at midnight. Say, I'm just getting up from work. Can I run by your house? I want to talk about stuff. Okay. Brother, you all right? It'll take me 30 minutes to get there. You know? And I got to let Taki come. When he was dreaming this up, when he was trying to put it together few years ago, I didn't know where he was going with it. You know, in the beginning, I didn't get it until after I really started working with him and our brother, who is the film genius.
Yeah, you know? To who he films. Shout out to Robert Seed and his wife.
Yeah. They were just extraordinary. We'd sit in my basement where I used to have my library, and they'd film me down there, and Taki would write some stuff out to me. He'd come in to film me, give me a script that I had to learn in 5 minutes so he could film it so he can get back home before 2 a.m. Right? But you gotta love that aspiration. Team he put together was an extraordinary team. The idea of using our ancient civilization motive force economically to set the tone for how we do economics today, I thought was like slick. You know?
Yeah, it's just what you were talking about. It's like knowing the history, and once you know the history, then it gives you a plan for the future. And so it's like when I heard you talking, I was like, that's HAPI. Like that's
but this was Taki mind. You know, he's well-traveled in Kemet and Sudan and other parts of Africa. He's been working on film projects. This is not his first project.
Yep, this is the third feature. Yep.
And so I just wanted to be a part of it. Of course, my teacher and mentor, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who's like a grandfather and a father to Taki, he was going to be a part of it. And my big brother, Dr. Wade Nobles, he's my big brother by 3 months. He was going to be a part of it. Then I heard Julian Malvo, as brilliant as she is, going to be a part of it, and Boyce Watkins and Infadishi and Baba Haru and Dr. Wade Nobles and my sister Patricia Newton. I said, I'm going to be a part of this because this is going to be, this is going to be big. It is a teaching tool for a people.
Yeah. I like that. It is a teaching tool
for people. And then we can use this tool and learn a lot from it. You know,
Yeah.
use it with our families, use it with our friends, use it in our churches, use it in our mosques.
Yeah.
Once I used to try to shut down churches and mosques. I don't do that no more. That's where we are. So let's work from there. Because we got to give our people credit. The only tool we had after that so-called Civil War, which was really our war of liberation, because we defeated the Confederacy, not the North. Okay, the North betrayed us after we defeated the Confederacy, and they made them the deal and the Rutherford B. Hayes, which is another story to tell. We had one tool, or really two tools that we could work. Well, you got to say three. We had the church, we had the Eastern Stars, and we had the Prince Hall Masons. Those three tools. And we dropped all three of them without studying the history of the effectiveness. Those are the tools that built the Black Wall Streets in Tulsa and Wilmington and Raleigh and Georgetown and Charleston. Those were the tools. And we let other people let us marginalize our own history. That's why it's important to learn your history. Because one thing I finally learned in studying, Christianity was given birth along the same Nile that is our HAPI. And the Christian church, not as we know it today, because this is a Europeanized, anglicized thing, but we blacken it up quite a bit in North America and the Caribbean. But it had its birth in Africa, not in Europe. And the Ethiopian church and the Egyptian Coptic church and the Sudan church existed 1,000 years before the birth of the Catholic church. But it didn't exist as this thing we call Christianity today. And so we have to study history so we don't make the mistake of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because our enemy has put our clothes on and has gotten it filthy. And have redesigned the clothing so it fits the body differently.
Yeah.
So history will get rid of the European mystery and allow us, in order to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety for ourselves and our family, we must imitate HAPI. And we must imitate what Kemet was able to do with HAPI, so that we can provide the food, clothing, shelter, and safety through control of economic politics and culture and the creation of retail, wholesale, and real estate ownership where we are, so we can produce the kind of educational system that will replicate the best in ourselves and our children. And at the same time, we can create banks and other kinds of financial institutions, insurance companies, etc. We came out of that enslavement, chattel part of the enslavement. We're still in the enslavement. But we got out of the chattel part with the chains on our hands and ankles in 1865. 66 at worst if we go to Texas. And by 1929, when the stock market was made to crash, because it didn't crash, they crashed it.
Yeah.
You know, we had already created 100 insurance companies, 75 banks, a couple of thousand credit unions, thousands of schools in that short period of time, coming out of chattel slavery where most of us couldn't read or write. Don't tell me what we can't do.
Yeah. We had our culture together.
We've done it. And if we study our history, we'll learn how we did it, and we can borrow the best of the tools from them and bring it into today's activity, And that's what HAPI is trying to instruct us and show us: how to monetize your life, how to turn riches into wealth, how to aggregate the capital you have as an ethnic nation, how to use a culture to define and protect the ethnic nation that you are. All of that is in HAPI.
Yeah.
HAPI will make you happy.
HAPI is going to make you happy. Again, everybody, get your tickets. Go to hapifilm.com, get your ticket, grab your family, sit down and watch this film. Right after you're done watching it, you'll be able to digitally download, because you're going to want to have this as part of your library. it's something to keep, as a reference. You're going to, as many times as I've seen this film, I keep learning something new every single time. And it takes me on a whole different journey with every single thing, that I'm learning. So I just implore everyone that can hear my voice, hear Professor Small's voice, get this film. It premieres on July 18th at 7 p.m. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them down now. I have a couple that I'm gonna get started with. Are you game, Professor Small?
Yeah, I always enjoy being with you, Felicia. You're a very good interviewer. He interviews me every day for an hour.
I know. Listen, you don't understand. It's like, it has been making my day talking to you every day. It really, you're just a wealth of everything. It's really nice. And you have nice skin. When you came closer to the camera, I was like, wow, look at your skin. Looks good.
I'm an African, Geechee, indigenous, former enslaved. See, one thing we have to know when we talk about who we are here in North America, there was a population, the indigenous people, and I'm not talking about the Mongoloids we call Indian. They're not the indigenous people to this country. We are the indigenous people to this country. They only came over 10,000 years ago. We had been here almost 500,000 years before they got here.
Yeah.
That population was fused with multiple other populations that sailed from Africa, the ones and came here trading back and forth, and some staying. The ones we know best is the ones the Mali civilization, under Mansa Musa. And then there is the millions who came on those enslaved ships in the wars of genocide, and we were captured and brought here. Well, we all amalgamated into this one people. Do you understand?
Yeah.
There's no secret forest hideaway where the indigenous Black folks is hanging out with somebody to cover them. We are the groups amalgamated. And even the groups who are now coming over voluntarily from Africa, they're beginning to intermarry and amalgamate with us too. And so here we are, probably the largest African gene pool in the world, or the largest collection of differing African gene pool in the world. And we still don't know how to identify ourselves. Isn't that crazy? We don't know what our identity is. Study history. History will get rid of the white man's mystery and let you be happy about learning from HAPI how to be happy by rebuilding what HAPI built way back then.
Oh, wait. Okay, wait. You said learn history to get rid of the white man's mystery. Learn HAPI. Because what?
Learn HAPI so you can be happy about HAPI. Allowed our ancestors to build that civilization.
There it is. Oh, I didn't know you dropping bars now. What's going on over there, Professor Paul? That's what's up.
But this is about the movie HAPI, because I taught at City College for almost 20 years. I was an administrator up there for 16 years. I was an imam over our mom.
Black studies.
And a lot of people didn't know I was an imam. They go like, oh, he just this professor guy. No. When Malcolm X got assassinated, I'm the guy that took over. I'm 21 years old then, and I become the imam of the Muslim mosque. I went to Mecca before most of you were born. And so one thing I learned from all of those different studies is that you've got to teach the people in the culture and language they understand. If you want them to learn how to build the culture and language they need to survive.
Yeah.
And HAPI is going to help us do this in a big way. The cinematography alone will trap you. It's so well done. It's so extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, I'm watching it that night and I go like, wow, it was like I wasn't even a part of it. I was enthralled by this thing. Go like, yeah, this is going to give a lot of lessons. And the teachers, we should call their name, Julian Malveaux, Boyce Watkins, Brother Jabari, Brother Infadishi, Baba Haru, Dr. Patricia Newton, Dr. Wade Noble, Dr. Leonard Jeffries.
Asar Imhotep, excuse me, Asar Imhotep, Ken Kelly, Jacqueline, Dr. Jacqueline Badalora,
So
Dr. Bruce Williams. Yeah.
we have the youth in here, we have the middle group, and we have the elders like myself in here.
Yeah.
And we are all trying to work together to give a message. Because when this whole thing with the coronavirus is over, unless we do what HAPI says, we're going to be right where we were before this thing happened.
Yeah.
And all the marches are over, unless we do what HAPI is trying to instruct us, to take control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live. Unless we do that, and that means we must divest in other people's nails parlor, we must divest in other people's hair parlor, divest in other people who have a religion that say they don't drink alcohol but selling us alcohol all day. I mean, you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. 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 Because
invest in the principles that HAPI is talking to us about, so that we can own the stores, and our young men and women won't be out there without jobs. We'll employ them in the beauty parlor. We'll employ them in the barber shop. We'll employ them in the store that's selling the plumbing products. We'll employ them in the firm that is doing the plumbing. We'll employ them in the house that's selling the electrical equipment. And we'll employ them as the electricians in our community. And we can go on and on and on. And this is how you do it. And HAPI is going to try to tell us how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of young people, we have Sharik Abdul Malik. He's the one that started We Buy Black. We have Mandy Bowman, who has the official Black Wall Street app. They're all up in the film. They're giving really some good information. Again, that's July 18th at 7 p.m., a Saturday. Grab your family, sit down and watch this film. Okay, I'm going to get to these questions. We have...
No, but tell them to go to hapifilm.com to get that ticket.
Get that ticket. Get the ticket and sign up for the newsletter. But right there, get your tickets now. HAPI premiere July 18th at 7 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. Go to hapifilm.com, guys. All right. So I have a question here from Bantu. He wants to know, how can you break down? Can you break down death?
Death?
Yes.
Like DEATH?
DEATH, yes.
Well, usually I tell people, what were they before they were? That's the first thing. Remember when you didn't exist as you. But guess what? You existed as your mother and father. Remember what I said?
Yeah.
Mother and father giving birth to you was giving birth to themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So you not only are your mother and father, when they pass away, you are the ancestors you're pouring the libation to.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep recreating ourselves, there is no such thing as death, because we are our parents were our grandparents was our great parents was our great-great-parents. We are the same spirit moving forward. You understand? And so when this conglomeration, when this union of matter, this 140 something elements that make up the human body and the electrical system that runs it gets injured or worn or crippled, the body energy that inhabits it and animates it leaves. In the Yoruba tradition, they call the concept awo. Alowo. And if you go and you come. And what it means is that each one of us have been here before. And so when this thing we call death occurs, meaning when the body is too damaged or too diseased or is injured or got worn out through age, is gone, the body of energy that was created doing those experiences in that body leaves it. And it comes back in the form of another baby. And our African tradition, and we call that, the world call that reincarnation, but in the Aloha tradition of the Yorubas, it says we come back in the same ebi, or family line, that we originally manifest on earth in. So most people don't realize, when you're giving birth to a child, you've given birth to your grandfather, your grandmother, your great auntie, or even yourself. So there's no such thing in the African tradition as death. There's transition. We are spirits in transition.
Wow. Yeah, I think about when I had my second son, I was like, oh my God, this is my dad. Like that little guy.
Man too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is from Kepra. She wanted to know, do you have any books? Any books you've written?
No, but I've been talking to Sister Felicia about this magnificent book that I need to write.
Yeah. Or a video.
But I have, my whole life has been activism. And so I just haven't had the time to stop and sit down and write. I've written the introduction to some extraordinary books, like a Wade Noble's book called The Isle of Meme.
Yes, so yes, you did.
I wrote the afterward to that one, which I thought was nice.
Yes.
My big sister Vera, edited and correct all my messy grammar stuff. It really look good. And then Nana Katsi and Ketsy's book is called, I had to look myself, it's called African Culture and Governance. I wrote the introduction to that. It's 800 pages, that book, and my introduction is about 30 pages. And it's an extraordinary doctrine. I think I wrote the introduction to one of the books someone did on Dr. Ben and a few others. But I hadn't stopped long enough. I've got about 50 manuscripts on spirituality and other things that need to be completed. Yeah. And at this age of being 75 in a few months, I know right now if I'm going to get it done, I need to hold the stage a little bit and try to get some of this literature down on paper. Since I've been speaking for 50 years, I've got thousands of tapes and this and all of this stuff all over the world.
Yeah.
I would like to put a lot of it in a document. And I'll even tell you the two areas. One's going to be on, of course, spirituality. Another one's going to be on identity. And the other one is going to be on a term that I coined in 1992, and that term is post-slavery trauma syndrome. And I say it differently from the way my younger sister says it, because I don't see it as a disorder. See, as a syndrome, it means it continues. It isn't like it's stopping and settling us. Post is past. Slavery is an act of genocide economically, politically, culturally, psychologically, and spiritually that was put upon us by an enemy in nature. And syndrome means that damage that came from that thing continues in our lives today. And we need to identify it in order to transform it or remove it from our character. And so those are the three pieces I really would love to do before I leave. Like I said, I've got a lot of manuscripts in some stage of completion about spirituality. I've been involved in, like I said, I was an imam at age 21. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, St. Anne's Baptist Church down in Acadia Plantation, Georgetown, South Carolina. So I come out of that whole tradition. My grandmother was a root lady, a traditional priestess. So I grew up in her house. She was my primary instructor. So I come out of this spiritual tradition, and the ancestors have given me multiple fantastic teachers through the years, from Mama Keke, who only the elders will know, who's a part of the Yoruba village that built the Yoruba village of South Carolina. But they used to be on 7th Avenue, and they lost their building back in, I think it was the late 60s. I allowed the Yoruba temple to meet in my mosque, which upset a lot of Muslims. They even tried to assassinate me because of that incident. Some minded people, because they said I was desecrating the mosque. But that same Baba with Malcolm X and compadre, when nobody else wanted to walk beside Malcolm, I started with Nana Perry Denny Zulu in Queens, and his son Kimanti Denny Zulu, my little brother, who's now an ancestor, who taught me so much about Tigray and the Daddy Kofi and other elements and strength of the Akan spiritual tradition. So I didn't just walk to this lightly, and I am a priest of the craft of Amun-Ra at the shrine of Hunefa. So I've been trying to learn this thing all of my life. I'm also a priest in the Yoruba tradition. I'm a Babalarisha of Oya, at the shrine of Kenny Cyrus Ile and Chaguanas, Trinidad, Enterprise Village. I've studied in the Voodoo tradition under Rolex, Maryland, for many years. So I was just trying to learn how do I learn about what they took away from us. So when you hear me talk, it's all of that stuff coming.
Yeah.
All of that, right? I wanted to learn, what do I need to go out here and find to bring back home and teach my people with? You know? And I don't tell people to join anything. I said, learn about it first, then find a community of people that you can be comfortable with before you take any oath or take any initiation or join anything. First, learn about what it is you're about to join or what it is you're about to become a part of. And there's some beautiful spiritual traditions and cultural institutions, from the Kemetic traditions to the Yoruba tradition, to the Akan tradition, to the Voodoo tradition, to the Root tradition in this country. And by the way, we never lost our culture. That's a myth. Okay. It got marginalized in this society. But we still practice our culture all over America, especially in the South, along the Gulf of Mexico and along the Atlantic Ocean, from New Orleans to Wilmington, North Carolina, from Jacksonville, Florida, to Mississippi, to Arkansas and Alabama, to Virginia. We still have our culture, but we need to learn how to recognize what the ancestors hid within the fabric of the American culture and the fabric of the church. They hid it for safety and survival. But until we study our history and study Africa, we won't even recognize right in our face.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about some of the stuff that like my grandfather used to do, and he's from South Carolina. And he used to do some things, and now like I'm learning stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what he was doing, And we never had a conversation about it, but it was something that we just learned to do.
They live their culture out.
Yeah.
And if you go, and then we'll come back to HAPI real quick, but after this piece, I just want to drop some things on people. If I went to Jamaica, they will talk about what's the church there? Oh my, I just missed it. But if I went to Haiti, they'll talk about voodoo. If I go to Puerto Rico, they'll talk about Santeria. If I go to Cuba, they'll talk about Lucumé. If I go to Brazil, they talk about what's the tradition called there? But when we come to North America, everybody acts like we lost everything. Let me tell you a little secret. The African American population was enslaved a shorter period than any of the other populations in America. So if anybody should have retained it, should have been us. We were in slavery for just a little bit more than 200 years, not 400 years. Yes, that's why you got to study history. It will erase the mystery, right?
Yeah.
1619, those people that was brought to America, they weren't enslaved. They were captured, being put in slavery. They became indentured and all got to be free in a few years and opened their own business and died, right? When you get an appreciable slavery in this country, it's in the 1690s. And it's all over in 1865. That's not as long as people are pretending. Somebody plays a game on your mind. So it would seem that, and during all of that period, even though they ended slavery supposedly bringing us over in 1808 or something like 1810, they were doing it right up until the 1860s, okay, the 1850s, right? And so we have more retention than we know, but we don't know where to look to find it.
That's a good point.
So study HAPI. HAPI will let you know you can look in the past to find the tools to build your future.
Yeah.
HAPI will show us how to learn from the past in order to reconstruct your future.
Yeah.
History, and HAPI at its core is history.
Yeah.
It will show you how to erase the white man's mystery.
Yeah.
And be happy.
Yeah. Watch HAPI. Be happy. You know what? I like that. We have to start using that every time now when we say it. We talk about HAPI. Okay, we have Sankofa X wanted to know what would be the first step in moving forward in my community to start lifting up some of the concepts of African culture, civilization, excellence, where there is no organization established.
Right.
Like what? Yeah.
The first step, start a study group with your family in your home and invite neighbor and friends who have a like mind like you, and rotate from home to home to build the bond. Just take 2 hours a week to watch a video together and discuss it, or to read a book and discuss it. And the next thing, so that you can feel like you're understanding what's happening in your ecology, get a notepad like this one and a pen. Your phone has the video camera on there. Pick any 10 blocks in your community and go from door to door and see what types of stores are there and who own them. It's called community mapping, right? And you will be shocked that you don't own your community, you know? And the people who own it don't live in your community, don't reinvest in your community, don't hire mostly from your community, but they get 100% of their income from your community. Those would be the 2 first steps I would suggest. After that, you probably tell me what to do.
Those are some good steps.
Because you'll be happy.
Yeah, because you'll be happy. You know, we have Ken Kelly, who's the
Let me just make one comment, because I saw my grandbaby Chance. I saw my daughter type in that your grandson Chance is watching his papa.
Oh, that's Chance. Oh, hi, Chance.
They're down in Hampton. So.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, you know, we have Ken Kelly, who's also in HAPI. He's the CEO of First Independence Bank. It's one of 21 Black banks left in the United States. And one of the things I remember when we were filming him in Detroit, he was talking about the circulation of the Black dollar. And when he said the other places, like how long it circulates, and he said in the African American community, it circulates for 6 hours.
Yeah, if that long.
I was like, wow, like, yeah, we got work to do, but we can do it. We can do it.
And it's important that he brought that up, and happy he's talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can see that if I spend the dollar at, say, the Black clothing store, and they take that dollar and give it the salary at the work in the store, and he takes that dollar and go to the Black barbershop or beauty shop, and to the hardware store, or to the Black lawyer, that money, each time he does that, that money is turning over again in our hands.
Yes,
but
yes.
If we don't control those facilities, then when he steps out of that clothing store with his paycheck, he puts that dollar in another ethnic group's hand to get those services. And so it goes from our hands to their hands.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta watch HAPI. Yeah, July 18th at 7 p.m. Go to hapifilm.com, get your ticket. Like, this is, you guys don't know, we have everyone in this film is still here. We're gonna, and also I wanna add that we're gonna have a panel discussion exclusively for people who buy the ticket. You buy the ticket, you get to get access to see the panel discussion, and we're gonna have all type of goodies. You're gonna, hear, from these people who were talking in the film. You will have a chance to talk and ask questions. So please, go to hapifilm.com, get your ticket.
Yeah, just think of the billions of dollars we spend on hair products with other ethnic groups that won't even smile in our face when we shop in this store. What if those billions of dollars went into our community, to young Black men and women?
Yes.
To get their children proper education, proper housing, proper medical care, proper clothing. All of this is what that revenue will help you to do if you can retain it in your community.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but we can't give $1 billion away to somebody from another ethnic group to buy hair products, and then have them at the end of the day pack it in a bag, like Malcolm say, when the sun goes down, they took that money to another part of town.
Exactly.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
You'll understand. And Dr. King, God bless his beautiful soul, in his last speech that night when he says, "My eyes have seen the glory to come of the Lord, and I've been no man. I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I won't get there with you, but you'll get there." Before he said all of that, he said, "I want you to boycott Coca-Cola. I want you to boycott Wonder Bread. I want you to take your money out of the white banks, put it in the black banks." This is Dr. Martin Luther King. "I want to take your money out of the white banks, put it in the black credit union." So what I'm saying is nothing new. Dr. King said it, and his supporters obviously support it. Somebody asked Malcolm X, "Brother Minister Malcolm, what do you mean by black nationalism?" He said, "Black nationalism when you own the economic, politics, and culture where you live." So we're not telling you something new. We're trying to bring it to you in a palatable way where you get it this time.
Where you get it this time. Yes. Yeah. And speaking of politicians, we have Charles Barron. He's in the film.
I knew Brother Charles when he was in the party back in the day, standing on the corner of 125th Street and Common Avenue selling the newspaper. So he's not new to struggle. This young brother been in the struggle all of his life.
Yeah.
Beautiful queen who has been in the struggle all of her life. You know, and they're doing so much in the Brooklyn community that they're part of, and so much for us in other communities. That whenever we get into trouble, everybody call the Barons.
Yeah.
New York you live in. And he has such an extraordinary wealth on how the politics work and how the economics work and how to build communities, because they've built institutions and supported institutions and raised up new institutions. All of these things will work because, you see, with the money, we can open a Black museum, we can open a Black library. With the monies, right, we can decide what kind of games our children play. We don't want them not to play games. We want to be tech savvy like everybody. But we want to see Queen Nzinga chopping the head of the beast off. You know what I'm saying? Gonzala. You know what I'm saying? So we need to understand what all this means.
You know what? It's so funny you say that. It's so funny you say that, Professor Small. I'm always yelling at my kids about this. I'm like, why? You guys can just build a game that takes place in Kemet. Okay, and everybody's there. You have everything.
When you get happy about HAPI, you will build a game that takes place on the Santee River in South Carolina, where there's a brother nobody ever heard about called Forrest Sam, who ran a guerrilla warfare against the British folks for almost 20 years before he was betrayed when they were tracking him down for killing some European farmer to steal the cattle to go feed his people in the forest. Who knows about Forrest Sam?
I know about Forrest Sam now.
Teach the people about Forrest Sam.
Yeah.
Who knows about the Freewood? The Freewood was the African American maroon communities. We didn't speak Spanish, so we didn't say maroon or cimarron. We said the Freewood. My family come on my grandfather's side, my mother's father's side, we come from the Freewood. And nobody messed with the Freewood ends, okay? And they didn't start coming up in that till the 60s. You know? So there's so much in our history that we can deify and write comic books about, make movies about, make games about, to re-socialize our children into the African men and women we want them to be. But it all starts with the economics that HAPI is trying to instruct us to grasp and understand, so that we can bring about the polity or the politics that will allow us to manage that economics appropriately, so it circulates in our community 12 and 13 times before it leaves. And then we need the culture to inform and instruct us on how to behave one towards the other, where the God in me loves the God in you.
Yes.
And we all dream, look on me.
Look at me. Wait, say it one more time.
Look on me.
Look on me. Look on me. I like that. You know, when Dr. Wade Nobles was here, he left us with Zola. And he was like, you gotta, Zola up each other. And up until that point, I was like, I didn't even know what that was too. I was like, okay. I was like, you guys have some good stuff. So it's all about the history. Okay, we have Daniel Bynes. He wants to know, do we always, when we transition, do we always come back or wait, let me just start over. Do we always come back as a human? Like, do we incarnate as a human?
And in the African system, you always come back as a human.
Okay.
And you always come back in the family you originally manifest in.
Oh. Wow.
Remember, if we're looking at the universe as the totality of one,
Mm-hmm.
there can be no beginning and there can be no end in anything. There's just transformation. Dr. Asa Hilliard told me so before he left, and I asked him, Bubba, what's wrong? What's going on? You've been acting a little different. We were out in Kansas City. He turned to me and said, Brother Small, we're just spirits in transition. 2 weeks later, he went on to the ancestors.
Wow. I think the last time I heard Asa Hilliard talk, I remember him, saying all these things we have to do. And he's like, listen, we have to learn to walk and chew gum at the same time. That was like, I always think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the stuff we have to do.
Yes. Let me say something to Brother Walter really quick for his good question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of how they dominate us, Brother Walter, is bringing in their religion to replace our spiritual system and then putting the fear of death in our minds and then hold the instrument of death to control us. When you come back to your tradition and you get rid of the fear of death because death don't exist, because the same me who exists now existed before this me existed, and I will always exist as the me, because I got 8 children and 23 grandchildren, and I've touched thousands of other children who I've transformed with my energy, and they too are my children, and that energy that I've imbued in them will be recreated as their children. This thing is deep when you get deep into the African spiritual system. That's why in Kemet, in the Nile Valley, where the HAPI flowed, they talk about the Netarus. What are the Netarus? The quality and attributes of the divine itself, as manifested in the universe, the ecology, and the human personality. And when we learn to cultivate those Netarus and learn to cultivate them in our character, then we can take HAPI and recreate the phenomena HAPI anywhere we live.
Yes.
That's why you will be happy with happy.
Be happy with happy.
Being happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at the history so you can erase the white man's history or the white man's no. Oh God, I've already messed it up.
Learn your history to erase the white man mystery.
Yes. Yes.
And you use your culture. Dr. Noble's taught me this one too. Those are my big brothers. So I listen to my teachers, as you can see.
Yeah.
He had he wrote one book. It's called Nsaka Sunsun, and it means to touch the spirit. So when you learn your culture, you learn to touch the spirit.
Wow.
Both in you and in others like you.
Wow. All right. Okay, we have one more question. This is from Antrell. How can we teach or show that our spirituality that has been demonized is not demonic to those who have a fear of it being ingrained in them?
By living the principles. Practice. Right. Live the principles. Be the light that you're describing.
Yes.
Be that light that you're describing. Live those principles. And when people see you, they'll begin to ask questions. Why is she acting different? Why he acting different? I'd like to be like that. I've taught all my life. And don't mean none of us going to be perfect, because the struggle is to perfect the totality of the divinity. But in that struggle towards perfection, let me see if I find this little note. I've been reading it to people all over the world. Oh, yeah. Because I'm talking about happy, and I got to read it again. I got to read this one, sister, because that's in my health. This is from ancient Kemet.
Okay.
Where happy dwell, where the god happy dwell, known as the Nile River. And it's translated by Dr. Asa Hilliard III, one of our great teachers. And it's about freedom. And it was written by someone named Amenhotep. Now listen to what this brother had to say 25,000 years ago. And I think this would be a good way to close out on that last question. He said, our first mistake was we thought of freedom as a place rather than as a continuation of a struggle. And he said, tyranny never sleeps. He said, our second mistake was that we thought of freedom as a goal rather than as a launching pad from which to reach our goals. Without purpose, freedom hardly matters. Our third mistake, Brother Amenhotep said, was that we thought that freedom made us free. That, however, is license and not freedom at all. And then he concludes, he said, freedom is being, listen to this word, free, this 25,000 years ago, the ancestors teaching us, freedom is being shackled to identity. Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, and direction, being in constant pursuit.
Wow.
This was written in the Happy Valley along the Happy River 25,000+ years ago. And it's apropos for today. That's why we can look back, go back in the past and do the Sankofa, go back and fetch it. Remember when you see the Sankofa bird, it isn't just the bird. A lot of times we pay attention just to the bird and we miss something. The bird is holding something in its mouth, an egg.
Mm-hmm.
And it says when you hold, and the egg represents what? The children, the future. If you hold them too tight, you crush them. If you hold them too loose, you drop them. So you must hold them just right. And how do you learn to do that? To look back and see how the ancestors held you.
Yeah. Wow.
So you look back to the Happy Valley, to the Happy River, to the happy culture that created a happy people, that created a happy civilization. And so we can learn from these ancestors how to do it again.
Yeah. What was the name of the book that you read that from?
I don't know the book, but it's the teachings of Amenhotep.
Oh, okay. The teachings of, we have quite a few people asking. Okay, the teachings of Amenhotep. Okay. All right. So, Professor Small, thank you. I see somebody was like, we need a Professor Small part 2. Like everyone's like, yeah. So, do you have any parting words to say?
No. Live your life like Brother Dessalines instruct us, freedom or death. Yeah. When you get rid of the fear of death, then you'll do what Amenhotep said. That freedom will be shackled to identity, purpose, and direction. And we live our lives not for ourselves, but for the children that is to come. When you live for the future generation, nothing can frighten you and nothing can deter you. Yeah. You live for yourself and somebody tells you they can take away that thing from you, then you can submit and collaborate with your own enemy and make you the enemy of your own children's future. But live for that future, not for this day, because somebody lived for our day as their future.
Yeah.
And then we can say freedom or death, and it's real.
Ashe. Thank you.
I'm satisfied with our deliberations this evening. So peace and blessings to all the brothers and sisters that tune in. Tell somebody else about HAPI. And July 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to hapifilms.com, get your ticket, and get in on this and see what we're doing. And then replicate it. And this isn't just a bunch of old heads doing it. We have the youngsters in here. We got the middle people in here. We got the economists in here. We got the priests and priestesses in here. We got the historian in here. We got the psychiatrist in here and the psychologist. We're trying to do this thing right.
Yeah.
And we have the best videographer and photographer in the world.
Yes.
My brother's name. Sometimes we don't call him out enough. Call him out. I want to call him.
Yes.
And then Baba Taki, our executive producer, he has no second. It's an extraordinary young mind, brilliant talents. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who has been one of Taki's inspiration and my teacher, is the man walks on water, really. You think I know, so I don't know nothing. I can't even get what I know in the head of a pin. But Leonard Jeffries is a library and a museum combined, along with his queen, Sister Rosalind Jeffries.
Yeah, and who's also in the film. Dr. Rosalind Jeffries Jeffries is in the film as well. Yeah. So just thank you again.
But tell the people, get the tickets now.
I'm about to.
On July 18th 7
July
p.m.
18th. Yes.
hapifilm.com.
Yes, but I gotta thank you first. Like, this is like really, like, you don't understand. I've been waiting for this day. I begged Taki. I was like, why did I have to beg him? Because I asked him one time, he said yes, and I was like, so I'm so excited, and this is so, this is nice. So thank you, and yes, everyone go to hapifilm.com, get your ticket. Sit down with your family, July 18th at 7 p.m. And remember, if you get a ticket, it also gets you access to the panel discussion afterwards. It's going to be lit. Look, Professor Small, I'm telling you, it's going to be lit. You got to get there. And I also want to say, today is my baby brother's birthday. Happy birthday, Tyra, because this morning when I called him, yes, I called him this morning. I'm like, oh, happy birthday. And he's like, he's like, Happy's blowing up. Like, he just wanted to talk about Happy. So I said, look, I got Professor Small.
I'm glad you raised that, because today is the birthday of my eldest brother.
Really?
And I called him this morning to wish him happy birthday.
Well, we got to talk.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's about 83 now. But you think he's 16 though. I mean, like, he's 83. There's no way this man can be 83. Not visually, all the way he moves and drives himself about and go take care of his business. And he's he's like the leader of our family. So happy birthday again, Uncle Andrew.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Uncle Andrew. And hi to Chance. And so I just want to just shout out to the HAPI team, Taki, Tahuti Films. We have Charles, Rock, Dion, Tammy, Elena, Daryl, and King Simon. And thank you for all the other people that have been actually interviewing all of our HAPI guests since we announced our tickets going on sale. So Sarah Imhotep, thank you. Philippe Matthews, thank you. Shrine of Ma'at, thank you. And African History Network, thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, guys, go to hapifilm.com, get your ticket. It's July 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sit down with your families. And remember, if you get a ticket, you get a free access to the after party panel discussion with our lovely esteemed cast members. So thank you again, Professor Small. And thank everybody that's listening to me. Peace and blessings.